Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 19, 2024 Operations Management, Budget, and Government Accountability Committee special meeting. I am Councilman Amilcar Hernandez, and I am chair of this committee. This meeting is being broadcasted live on HPA-TV's Xfinity Government Channel 96 and Frontier Government Channel 6032. It will also be streamed via hpa-tv.org, Facebook page, and HPA-TV Apple TV, Amazon TV, and Roku TV apps. It will also be made available on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. I'd like to acknowledge any of my councilman colleagues. I do not see any of them online yet. Wonder if we should wait a few minutes so we could have quorum. Let me ask around real quick. I do see voting member Councilman Alex Thomas joining us. And we also have voting member Councilwoman Mali Rosado also joining us. And I think that now we do have a quorum. So we will continue on. So I'd like to acknowledge as well Director of Capital Improvement Plan, Paul Dromi. We have our City Assessor, John Phillip. We also have our Registrar of Voter, Giselle Feliciano as well. And then we have from Town Clerk's Office, we have Eric Lusa as well joining us. We're gonna start with on the agenda, we're gonna start with item 2.1. Mayor Arulampalan with accompanying ordinance amendment of section 32-18 of the municipal code, the elderly tax letter. And I believe we have our city assessor, John Phillip, to speak on this item.
Yes, thank you. Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you are loud and clear.
Okay, it just told me I was muted, but I guess that was late. So I'm here for the annual update of the elderly tax ordinance. It is grand list specific, so it needs, at least the grand list needs to be updated every year. We do also recommend increasing the income limits. Those are tied to HUD's income limits that are published annually. And
to OMB committee.
What's that?
I'm listening to the OMB committee.
Oh, okay.
Our apologies, city assessor.
That's okay. So we also recommend every year that we move the income limits to whatever HUD is recommending. I think one year their income limits went down, and Mayor Segarra's office did not want to push anybody out of the program, so that year we stayed where we were. But this year, we are recommending the income limit, and this is gross income for a single person, rise to 66,160 from 62,600, and for a married couple, rise from 71,550 to 75,600. Just as a point of reference, last year, with a $1,000 flat assessment credit, tax credit, we had 668 people enrolled in the program, and it cost $603,190 to the city. The reason it's not exactly $668,000 is because some people don't own a full share of their house. They share it with relatives. or they have met the cap of 75% of the state benefit plus the city benefit. And I have a history here if anybody's interested, but that's our proposal in a nutshell.
Thank you, City Assessor. Are there any of my colleague members with any questions or any statements regarding this resolution? Councilwoman Rosado.
Hello, Mr. Phillips. How are you?
Hi, Councilwoman. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good. When you have a chance, can you send us a report of how many individuals in the city of Hartford applied for these credits? I don't know if I missed any part of the meeting.
Sure. But I don't know if somebody is obviously over income, we would say that right off the bat and not go through the time of actually taking their application. So I don't know if I can tell you how many people applied. I can certainly tell you how many people are enrolled, and we may have some where we were actually taking in an application and we got to the end of the process and realized they were overvalued, over income rather. But I think that would be the exception to the rule.
Okay. And do you get a lot of individuals that only speak Spanish and need help filling out these forms?
Yes, but I have 3 Spanish speakers in my office at this point.
Oh, wonderful. That's nice to know.
Yeah.
So just congratulating on the work, great job that you continue to do for the city of Hartford. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank
and thank
you.
you, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman John Gale.
Yeah, good evening, and my apologies for being late. I actually read the agenda, and it didn't use the word virtual on it. So I'm here at City Hall thinking that this is a real meeting.
I'm in City Hall too. And
Well,
I
should come
walked out there and
downstairs
got dark.
I should come downstairs and join you. And I apologize since I got on late. I'm going to ask you questions that I'm sure you already answered, but
That's
I don't
fine.
have the. So 2 questions. One is we're increasing the credit from $750 to $1,000, and I just want to know what the price, your estimated price tag is for the increase, and likewise we're increasing the income limitations, and I want to know what your estimate is for the price and the cost to increase the income limits.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because I think we're raising the income limits in the ordinance. We're raising the credit in the ordinance this year from $750 to $1,000. But I think you folks did that by resolution last year. It was never codified in the ordinance. Last year's credit was in fact $1,000, and now we're just codifying that in the ordinance.
So that's no net increase because we already budgeted it last year.
Yes, that's right. And last year we had 668 people in the program, and it cost $603,190. I don't know about the income limits. We get inquiries all year long, and we have to. So it's a 2-year application. You come in once, you're good for 2 years, and then we send you a reminder in the 3rd year that it's your year to come back. We keep a running list of people who have never been enrolled who come in and inquire throughout the year. And then when we send out those reminders, we include them in that. This year we didn't. I think we had a fairly normal number of folks on the list for reminders as a new applicant. And I think that was somewhere in the 30 range, but if you bear with me for just a sec, I will confirm that for you exactly. The year of and the year after the revaluation, we had well over 100 people express interest, and get those reminder letters. But except for 2020, the numbers have been more or less the same or even declining, despite the fact that there's a lot of inquiries, and we do send them a reminder letter to come in. The filing period is from February to May 15th, so it's not like it's a rushed thing like an appeal to the Board of Assessment Appeals. All right, I am almost there. So this year we had 35 that came to us throughout the course of the year, and we sent them a reminder to come in. And since I can't give you an estimate now of how many we're going to have this year, because the heaviest part of the
Highest mail.
application period is yet to come.
Good. So I haven't called you back today.
All right, well, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. So it actually doesn't sound like raising the income limit doesn't seem like it's going to add, it may add nobody, or it may add a couple of people. It doesn't sound like
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't sound like it's very dramatic.
20 would be a lot, I think.
All right, thanks very much. No other
You're
questions,
welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Before we continue, I'd like to acknowledge those that joined us after my initial introduction. Voting member Councilman John Gale, Corporate Counsel Jonathan Harding, non-voting member Council President Shirley Surgeon, voting member Assistant Majority Leader TJ Clark, and non-voting member Councilwoman Kelly Billiton. Anyone else would like to ask any questions regarding item 2.1 on the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I do, through you.
Councilman Assistant Majority Leader TJ Clark.
Good evening. Our city assessor brought up an interesting point, because last year, which was the last council term, we changed the limits by way of resolution. I think this is more so a question for our corporation council. Do we have to do another resolution, since resolutions usually last only as good for during that council term, even though we're doing a new ordinance?
Sorry, through you, if I may, Mr. Chair. Councilman Clark, you are asking whether, let me just pull it back up. Sorry.
I'm asking whether do we need to introduce another resolution to increase the income limits that go with this ordinance, or would just the ordinance suffice? Because last year we just did a resolution, but the resolution is only as good as during that council term.
I believe that in passing this new ordinance, that would extend the authority of the assessor based on this ordinance, but I haven't thought about it since this moment. So if you want to circle back to me, I'll give it some thought.
Okay.
In the
I just
meantime,
want to make sure from the council side that we're clear.
thank you. In the meantime, Councilwoman Rosado.
Yes, I just want to piggyback on what Councilman Clark just stated, which is a good question, but I was under the understanding that the only time a resolution would die was if it was still pending and no action was taken on it, that if we had passed a resolution, it would stand. Just like any ordinances that we leave open in a prior administration and they're not passed, they die, and we have to bring them back on the table. But I thought resolution wise, once we approved it, it was validated.
we'll let Corporate Counsel Harding take that as well and think about it. Corporate Counsel, you need a little bit more time? Circle back?
Chair, no, I think I'm okay. I mean, this is a new ordinance, or there are changes to our code being made by this ordinance. And maybe I'm not understanding the question potentially, Councilman Clark, and I apologize for misunderstanding you, but I don't see any reason why the council would not have the ability to make these changes under the ordinance contemplated.
Yeah.
No, my question was to you, Mr. Chair, since even though the council passed the resolution last term, that's for that term. This is a new term. There was no ordinance that was put in place. We have a new ordinance that's coming in to bring up these income levels. And so since this is a new council term, should we introduce a resolution to back up this ordinance, or is the ordinance good enough absent of
Yeah.
a resolution?
I believe this ordinance would speak for itself. I think this ordinance is fine.
Okay.
Council President Sherry Surgeon.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And through you, Mr. Chair, to the assessor. Mr. Phillips, isn't this an ordinance we do every year to get it into the next fiscal year's budget?
It is. I think what was unusual last year is we went through, I don't think there was a recommendation from the mayor to increase the credit last year. So we went through the process of modifying the ordinance, and then council wanted to raise the credit, if my memory is correct, and did that through a resolution, and now we're trying to get that codified.
Okay, so last year, let me remember, I think Councilman Gill had recommended, and we all agreed to increase the tax credit, which we changed with the ordinance. And so because the resolution that we passed last year affected the tax credit for last year, but if we wanted was to get this for effects for the 24-25 budget, we would need to increase the income level in the ordinance now also.
That happens more or less every year, the income levels.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. At this point, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion for favorable recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Motion has been made, properly second. Any comments? All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Anybody against it? Abstain? Okay. Well, ayes have it. Let the record show that we are sending item 2.1 back to council with a favorable recommendation. And we're staying with John Phillips. Item 2.2. Councilwoman Mally Rosado, resolution on promoting awareness of tax abatement provisions for vehicle taxes under Connecticut General Statutes, Title 12, Section 12-124. I believe John Phillips will be speaking on this item.
That's a tax collector thing. I
Okay.
don't have anything to do with that.
Councilwoman Rosado, do we have Nancy or anybody?
I think Nancy's father died and he lived in Canada.
Okay.
And so she's been out. I'm sorry, I was approached to do that, but I'm not comfortable even weighing in because I don't know what options Nancy has. I don't want to say something is easy when it's not, or say it's not easy when it is. And I'm just not involved in the process of creating bills or mailing them out or doing supplements.
Okay, Councilwoman Rosado, do we have any?
Yes, on that note, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this item in committee.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made, properly second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. Let the record show that item 2.2 will be postponed and will be returning back to committee on our next committee meeting next month. Let's move on to our next item, 2.3, Mayor Arolan Plan with accompanying resolution authorizing a budget increase for the school building projects currently underway at the Burns Latino Studies Academy renovation project. We have Director of Capital Improvement Plan, Paul Drummond.
Good evening or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your time. Chair, may I share my screen?
Yes. Do you have access to do it?
It says I need
Okay.
access.
Yeah, Noelia will be.
Okay,
Okay.
I believe she did already. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. All right, again, good afternoon, everybody. So the first item is Burns Latino School Studies School. The authorization needed from the city is $9.091 million. And a little history is during pre-construction of the Burns Latino Studies Academy, the need to achieve budgetary approval for the project required extensive value engineering. The final project was dramatically changed from the original design, and the subsequent construction did not meet the expectations of the owner nor the expectations of the design team. Additionally, following the start of construction, extensive unforeseen environmental and structural conditions were discovered. These unforeseen conditions have resulted in additional selective abatement and structural repairs. Based on what the project is now aware of, they forecasted, meaning the project team, myself and the city architect, construction manager, and the design team, forecasted the issues for the remainder of the building not yet under construction. The additional funding includes many items that were anticipated to be necessary as the project continues to progress. So a little more to this, if I may, is certain items such as play sets were value engineered out to where, we got to a point to where the abatement and the structural repairs as we're opening up each section phase of this school, we needed to do an ask. So since we needed to go back to the state and ask for additional funding and council for that matter, we felt why not take the opportunity to get the things that the children actually are going to enjoy, such as the play set that was value engineered and other programmatic things throughout the school as well. So they tallied all the things that were really in the beginning taken out of the project and put those back in for the request. Moving on, so this is really just a cut and paste of what I sent the mayor to send to Council President Surgeon. Attached is the resolution authorizing $9.09 million budget increase for the school building projects currently underway at Burns Latino Studies Academy renovation project. So in previous approvals, the city council appropriated $52 million, $52.4 million, as well as another $3 million for the renovation state project 0640312 at a 95% reimbursement rate. Cost increases are due to unforeseen structural and environmental conditions required to complete the project, as well as reintroducing key programmatic items that were value engineered out of the project to stay in line with the original budget. The unforeseen conditions and reintroduced items are eligible for grant reimbursement. This has been reviewed by the building committee, DAS, representatives from the city, public schools, etc. And just to go on to the whereas, just to give you a holistic view of the budget. So with this ask of authorizing the increase of $9.09 million, the total increase would bring the total project budget for Burns Latino Studies Academy to $64.49 million. Another thing to note here is typically, as the next one I'm going to discuss, Canelli School, is we have the authorizations done first, and then the state would like to see that the city supports the increase in the budget, and then they come afterwards and offer their support. So in this particular case, myself and the project team went to the Department of Administrative Services and were fortunate enough to receive a letter from the commissioner noting that they already support. So we are already whole as the state is considered. So at $64.49 million, with this 9.091 asking council for today, I just wanted to, that's an important note, knowing that the 95% reimbursement from the state is already in place before I even came before the council. With that, I'll answer any questions on Burns before I move on to the next.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone with any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, John Gale.
Councilman Gill.
So if I understand the numbers, the original project was 52 million. And my recollection is that that number is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 years old at this point. Probably predates COVID. And so now the new number is 64 million. And I'm understanding that the 64 million is going to get us what we expected to get at 52 million, almost lost. But it will get us back to where we thought we were going to be originally. And it strikes me that's about a 25% increase in the total cost. And I know I've heard industry-wide that as a result of COVID, or well, maybe not as a result of COVID, but during the course of the last 3-4 years, construction expenses have gone up. And I think people throw around the number 25%. Am I kind of on target here with these conclusions?
So, Councilman, thank you for that. So, percentage-wise, I wouldn't be able to speak to, but certainly the pandemic is a cause for a lot of these increases. Certainly, you know, the escalation between pre and post, and this is a pre-pandemic project. So certainly all the points that you brought up are a factor in the request for this increase. Percentage 25%. I don't know that is entirely COVID driven, Councilman, because there are unforeseen issues that apply here.
The environmental, the environmental issues.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of that, are you able to break down for us how much of the 9 million is going for structural and environmental conditions versus how much of it is getting back to the things that were cut out?
It's a great question. And I had the budget sheet up, Councilman. Let me see if I can bring it up in short order here. So furniture and equipment, there is 2.1 going back in. So that is the good stuff, the end user, children, items that to enjoy, technology. So right off the bat, Councilman, as I'm scrolling down, we have 4.2 going to the kids and the staff. The playground's another 800. So, and then there's contingency here too as well. So out of the 9, that'll take us down to 7. And out of the 7, 5 of the 7 is for programmatic purposes. So 2 million for environmental and demolition, structural repairs.
Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else with any questions? Okay, seeing none. At this point, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion
Move to
for
send
favorable
back.
recommendation.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion has been made, properly second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone against it? Okay, well, seeing none, the ayes have it, and we will be sending this item back with a favorable recommendation back to council. Let's go now to item 2.4. And Mayor Lampalan with accompanying resolution authorizing a budget increase for the school building project currently underway at the E.B. Kennelly School. And once again, we have Director of Capital Improvement Plan, Paul Drumey.
Thank you, Chair. Hello again, everybody. So again, I'll go through the same motions I went through previously with Burns. So the authorization needed from the city and state is $7.8 million, and the authorization from the state is 28.82, both equaling. Let's scroll down here a little bit. It's not going to tell me. I have it on my calculator. It's an important piece of information. I apologize for not having it written down, but it'll take me 1 second to compute. Okay. All right, so both equaling $36,713,775. So, and the reason why I had these split, unlike Burns before, is this has gone through council once already. So this project is in design. We are ready to go out to bid for phase one, which is the temporary classrooms to gain the space in order to start renovating the school. So back in December, November, December, we came before the council for approval of 28.82 million. At that time, we were accumulating the revision, the SCG 049 revision for the grant. And so the original budget at 51 million plus the 28 was positioned to go on the priority list. We also did the adjustments to Fred D. Wish as well as Betances schools. So all three of those reauthorizations were approved by council in hopes that they would make the priority list in 2024. Betances and Wish made the priority list, so those are teed up to be they are on the priority list, and they're teed up for legislative approval in June. Actually, the short session coming up. This did not make the list for whatever reason. It was odd to me, in as much as there were three other schools that weren't even in motion. That would be Sanchez, and Batchelder. And if it was a budgetary thing, I would have taken one of those off that aren't in the middle of design if it was a budgetary issue, and then have Pinelli put on. So we had those conversations with the state. We had several meetings, and we'll get into it a little bit here. So back in November, City Council approved the 3 budget increases for Wish, Betances, and Pinelli in anticipation that they would make the 2020 priority list in mid-December. The Pinelli School project did not make the list, so the project team reached out to DAS to find out why. After 6 weeks of communicating back and forth, the city HPS, Hartford Public Schools, and Colliers project leaders, who was the OPM on this project, met with the Department of Administrative Services to discuss next steps. The meeting ended up with the consensus that it would require special legislation to go back to Pinelli onto the priority list with notwithstanding language. So that is where we are now. So working with the deputy chief of staff and the mayor to work with the delegation and have this backed on with notwithstanding language onto the priority list. So the resolution before you tonight is to be fully appropriated for that priority list submission. Right now we are, and if I read through this, I think it'll make a little more sense rather than rambling on here, so I'm just going to do such. So attached to this transmittal is a resolution authorizing a budget increase for the school building projects currently underway at the EB Pinelli School. In previous approvals, the Hartford City Council appropriated 51.4 and then appropriated an additional 28.8 for the renovation of EB Pinelli School State Project 064-0317 at a 95% reimbursement. As the project team went through the design progression process, it was realized that another 7.8 million increase to the 80.23 budget was necessary to complete the project in line with the educational specifications. Again, reviewed by the building committee administrative services, Hartford Public Schools, etc. And then the whereas language is such. And at this point, Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Dromi. Anyone with any questions? Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Dromi. You know, when you gave us the explanation on Burns, you were very specific that the increase was the result of certain items having been cut out in order to meet the budget, as well as some unexpected new things that were discovered, structural and environmental issues. In this presentation, it appears that in December we approved 28 million, and here you are 3 months later, suddenly deciding, oh, wait a minute, we blew it. It should have really had another 7.8 added to it. As I'm hearing you, I'm not hearing that anything new or different changed.
Great question, Councilman. So as we're going through the process with DAS, going back and forth and making sure that the budget was accurate, the project team, construction manager, and the design team really did a deep dive to make sure, because you really only have one bite at the apple when it comes to your 049R, and it was a recommendation from DAS councilman to make sure that this last bite at the apple for state appropriation was all that you needed, so you didn't have to come back for more. There's certainly no reason we need to spend it all, but we wanted to make sure that there was enough to cover all of the unforeseens in the project. We know we have some, quite a bit. There's an addition going on this school, Councilman, which has some uncertainties to it. So they added a little bit of contingency to that line item. So it was more that was, as we went before DAS on the original approval, that those were the recommendations from them to comb through it one more time to make sure that your number coming to us in legislation for your R is enough.
Well, since DAS is funding 95% of it, I guess if they think we should have it, I'm good with it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman, Assistant Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think Director Dromi for his presentation. I think it's just good to emphasize. I think he would agree that these recommendations of budget increases are from DAS. They're not from the city and the project management team. So as he said, I can't emphasize enough that this is one bite at the apple with a short session. And so this is why Director Dromi is coming back to the council for these budget increases, because of DAS and not anything that the city has miscalculated.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else with any questions? I'd like to then ask this question. So this additional funding, it's also at the 95% reimbursement rate, correct?
That's correct.
So we are still on the hook for the other 5%.
That's correct.
That 5% is these are not pennies, because 5% out of that almost 7.9 million, that's about $400,000. If my math is correct, but I just did that on the fly, so hopefully I'm correct. It's about $400,000 or so, maybe a little less than that. So in this request, we also have to take into account, 95% is great, but that other 5% is still, and that is, can we say that is already part of your budget within CIP?
We budgeted the city share for this number, Councilman. So the school city share for fiscal year 25 and 24 and 25 are budgeted for.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else with any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion at this point.
I'll entertain a motion to refer back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion has been made, properly second. Any comments? Seeing none. Anyone, everyone with
Favorable.
supporting favorably this motion, please say so by saying aye.
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 Anyone against? Seeing none, the ayes have it. Let the record show that item 2.4 will be sent back to with a favorable recommendation back to council. Now let's move on to 2.5.
Recording in progress.
So while we have a moment,
Hey, you're live now, gentlemen and ladies.
We are live. Can you hold that thought, Councilman Gale?
yes, go for it.
Perfect. Okay. Now that we're back live, we are going to move on to item 2.5. Councilman John Gale and Councilwoman Miley Rosado, resolution calling for the Hartford Town Clerk to mail absentee ballots, applications, and essential information to each registered voter in the city prior to the presidential election to ensure maximum public awareness and participation. It is my understanding that we have several folks speaking on this item. We will start with Town Clerk Noel McGregor.
I wonder if the town clerk got back on.
Yeah, he's logged
Yeah,
in.
I'm here. Thank you,
Oh, good.
Councilman. Yes, we were consulted by Councilman Gale the possibility of mailing out absentee ballot applications to all of the residents of City of Hartford to improve voter participation. We are all aware, our numbers are not great. Matter of fact, they're kind of terrible. So we were brainstorming how to better improve that. And one of the ways is possibility of mailing out applications for absentee ballot to all of our voters. It was done through COVID when the Secretary of State mailed out to all of the voters, and the response, and it was generated by COVID, was that approximately a third of the votes that were cast for the presidential election of 2020 were cast through the absentee ballot portal in the town clerk's office. There still are some questions on the expenses that would be needed, the revenues that would be needed to conduct such an operation. And we have a plan to talk to vendors at our next town clerk's meeting, statewide meeting, where all the vendors come and we can sit down and talk to them about what it would take for us to be able to do that. I've also spoken to the mailroom, and we have a bulk stamp certificate, bulk rate stamp certificate permit, I should say. So we're still gathering information on what the cost would be. At this point, it's kind of soon for us to have all that information, but it would cost us upwards of probably 50 to 60,000 we're anticipating. We have applied for a grant from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. It was a $25,000 grant that would is supposed to increase voter turnout. We haven't heard back from that grant, and we thought the possibility to use that grant to offset some of the expenses. But there's still a lot of questions that have to be answered. It's still kind of soon for us to answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Town Clerk. Next to speak, we have Eric Lusa, Deputy Town Clerk.
Thank you, Councilman. I have nothing to add at this time.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but at this time, I have nothing to add, unless there's anything specific to any specific questions.
Perfect, thank you, thank you. Do we have, believe Giselle Feliciano, our registered voters?
Good evening, council members and members of the public that are watching. The AB process, the application piece, is actually the town clerk's process, so they would have to entertain that piece. I can break down, well, my questions will be asked when, what type of report you were looking back for. And if someone can just kind of entertain me with what exactly you're looking for from the registrar of voters within this resolution. Through you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Gale.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the sponsor of the resolution, let me address it a little, give it a little background here and some of my understanding. The state law requires does not prohibit, let me put it that way. State law does not prohibit any one person or any one entity, for that matter, sending out, taking out absentee ballot applications. The state law requirement for the distribution of absentee ballot applications is that they be numbered and that you keep track of who you distribute them to. So from the town clerk's perspective, this would require knowing our voting list, and certainly the town clerk can chime in when I'm done and tell me, whether I've accurately stated this. But I believe in our discussions, from the town clerk's perspective, this would require having approximately 65,000 absentee ballot applications sequentially numbered and then mailed to our voting list, and that would satisfy the requirements of the state statute. I did, actually, I think it was Council President Surgeon reached out to contacts within the Secretary of State's office to ask whether there were any particular issues that the Secretary of State's office thought might arise from doing this. And my understanding from the response is that it's not prohibited. So seemingly, therefore, we could take the initiative and reach out to all the voters. We know that, and the poster child in this has been the city of Bridgeport, where there's been a lot of absentee ballot issues because of different groups taking absentee ballots, and they're not being, they've had several court challenges where there's been fraud alleged, and I think actually improprieties have been found and new elections required. So by Hartford doing this, we're kind of making it uniform, making it totally non-discriminatory. It's going to be mailed to every registered voter. I rather think it's the type of thing that the other municipalities are likely to pick up on it and do themselves once we do it, and the state should certainly consider doing it. The state, it strikes me, should be getting a little bit more involved in making the election process totally separate from any individual, whether it's a particular political party or any particular individuals, taking it away from that type of influence and making it totally independent and just a very clean election process. So in doing that, if we're going to already mail an absentee ballot application to all 66,000 voters, it certainly strikes me it's an opportune time to also provide every one of our voters a little information about the election. Connecticut currently provides no information to voters. No. There may be some public service announcements, but there's nothing that comes from the Secretary of State or from any municipality directly to a voter saying that there's an election coming up. And in this regard, Connecticut is one of only 4 states, as I understand it, that don't do something. There are some states that do dramatic things. I provided the town clerk with a publication from California for their presidential primary. So this was not their general election, but this is their presidential primary election. I believe it's about a 28-page booklet that they send out to every registered voter that tells us reams and reams of information. This resolution does not suggest that, but it does suggest sending out 1 page in Spanish and English that tells voters, hey, there's a presidential election, and hey, this is what you get to vote for. You get to vote for a president, a United States senator, a United States congressperson, a state senator, a state representative. And in Hartford, I think our registrar of voters is up for election. So it would tell voters that there's an election. It would tell them the offices, and we could provide useful links. Here's where you find more information about the candidates. Here's where you find more information about your polling place, this type of stuff. So that's the overall concept. As you've heard from the town clerk, there are costs involved, obviously. There's some mailing costs to mail these out. There's also some increased costs, as was explained to me by the town clerk, because the expectation is that by mailing out these absentee ballot applications, there would be an increased number of individuals utilizing the process, the town clerk's office would have to add some additional individuals to help process the absentee ballots themselves. And so I believe that the very approximate $50,000 to $60,000 number that the town clerk has thrown out is taking into account those various expenses. All in all, this seems rather modest in an effort for Hartford to be a real leader and start the process of letting voters know a little bit more information than we have in the past. So that's kind of the broad outline of at least the thought process that went into this. Happy to hear what others have to say in response.
Thank you, Councilman Gale. Council President Surgeon. You are on mute.
Yep, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. When Councilman Gale presented this idea to me about doing mailing out for the general election for the presidential election at the end of the year, sounds like a great idea, trying to get more active people involved in the electoral process. I've been involved in the electoral process as a register of voters for the city of Hartford several years ago. I'm a retiree as an election officer from the Secretary of State. So my love for getting more voters involved, especially in our city of Hartford, is always a welcome opportunity for me. Of course, Councilman Gale says one of the things I do, is I do my research and, sent, the draft copy to the Secretary of State's office to get their opinion. Also ask our attorney or esteemed attorney, Corporation Counsel, for their opinion. And I also made some phone calls to other election officials, throughout the state to get their opinion, just to make sure that, my decision was going to be going in the right direction. So a couple of things. The Secretary of State office didn't say, we could not do this. But of course, they reminded us of all the restrictions that comes along with it. For example, the 60,000 voters that we'll be mailing an application to, we would have to do it in-house. We could not do it outside because, we are the ones, the city's the one who's doing the mailing. We have to certainly, as Councilman Gale alluded to, we have to keep, if you're mailing one application to Shirley, all the applications has to be numbered, just like all the requirements says that needs to be done. So even though the town clerk says that we have a bulk rate stamp, the envelope has to be stuffed and mailed, and kept track of. And the town clerk would have to file a report with themselves, of where and whom we mailed the 60,000 application to. So no, that's going to be a daunting task. That's number one. Then I remember going back and as election officer, Secretary of State's office, and we mailed out millions of application to the entire state during COVID. It was a daunting task. It was COVID. Nobody was going out to the polls. And so we did see an increase in our application and people voting by absentee at that time. I do like the concept of all, voter education. But one of the things we also have going with us this year is we have early voting, which is 14 days of voting before actual election day voting. So I believe we are giving people an opportunity right now to, participate in the electoral process. And I wouldn't even go to the concept of there may be, some people have said, it could be, we could possibly have voter fraud. I don't even want to look at it that way, because when we did that in 2021, we didn't have those issues. What I did see when we did that mailing statewide is a lot of our voters' information is not correct. We got a lot of return mail. And one of the things I did notice more than anything else is that when the application is mailed back to the town clerk, some people forget to sign. They forget to put their date of birth. Some parts of the application, they didn't check one of the 5 reasons why they are voting, by, absentee. And again, you would have to follow that up. So that's additional more work. At the same time, I do want to make everybody aware that, on the ballot this year, hopefully, there will be no excuse voting that would be on the ballot that voters will be voting for. And I believe when we have no excuse voting, that really would provide us with the opportunity to mail out to all our voters, and we wouldn't have any issues or concerns of fraud or anything else going on. Because again, one of the excuses on the application for voting by absentee is illness. During the COVID time, that requirement was somewhat not totally defined. If you feel you have to go into the polling place, you may get sick, you could check illness. Again, that has not opened up totally. And so that is an issue and concern of mine. So when I did all my research, I talked to other towns. Other towns have mailed out have used this process, and they have not seen also an increase in their voter turnout, the increase in absentee and a decrease in the polling place. So those are my issues and concern with doing it this year. I would love to do something like this, but I would love to see no excuse voting pass with the city, with the state, and that will free up a lot more opportunities for us to do mailing out the application to all the voters in the city. That's my statement, Mr. Chair.
Your Council President. I register of voters, Giselle Feliciano.
Thank you, Council President. Through you, Chair. So in 2020, the Secretary of State did, under COVID, decide to mail out all applications, which prevented us, to go in to do our supervised absentee ballots. Our permanent absentee ballots were already taken care of by the town clerk. So there's a high number. With that being said, that's not what's happening now. So I have to agree with Shirley. In 2020, although all those applications came out, we had a 50% increase in voters that actually turned out to the polling place because they felt more comfortable making sure that their ballot was actually counted besides the application. Or a lot of people moved during the process and did not get the application. It's true what Council President Surgeon had stated. What this did do was assist a lot of registrars with cleaning up the registry list. Now, moving forward to today, we currently do that on a regular. And I'm going to explain. There's different ways that we do it. One, canvas, which will be taken out on April 2nd due to the presidential primary. We also have an ERIC report, which the state of Connecticut is one of the states that participates with that, and that comes directly from the Secretary of State, that allows us to know changes of every voters that do come in. And also, when we do deliver or we mail out your actual correspondence and its return, we have to go through the process of remailing you out another letter before that person becomes inactive and so forth on the thing. So there's several steps that we have to take to clean up our registry. Currently, the Secretary of State has been sending us a lot of death notices. This is something new that they've done. But here in our office, we are connected with the town clerk's death website that allows us to update a lot of our dead people, which was not happening on a currently basis back then due to new data. So with that being said, I would like to suggest if you want to make the public aware, and not only, before I go to that, early voting is just starting off. So we are going to start it off next week, 10 to 6. We have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're off Friday, we're back here Saturday. In August primary, we have 8 days of it. In November's general election, we have 14 days. So you got to give that opportunity. My suggestion will be, if you want to make the residents of Hartford aware of elections that are going to be mailed out, before mailing out the applications, all our tax bills are going to be sent out for July, which is prior to the August primary, it's prior to the November election. That's one way of inserting a small sheet of paper saying elections and so forth, and however we want to place it. It's already at a cost savings to the city because tax bills are already calculated in the budget, and you can mail that out to notify all the residents within Hartford. I do have a grant. It's not much money. It was given to all the registrars within the city, within the state, I'm sorry. And I'm trying to figure out how to use it in a wise way where we can inform all the public in regards to the early voting process and the elections that are happening this year. Of course, presidential elections, federal elections are one of the highest turnouts compared to the municipalities and governors. So that's where the real issue is in my eyes. So I'll entertain any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to make a statement before I move on to our next colleagues. So the statute states that no one, and I could be wrong, but I'm hopefully I quote this correctly, that no one should be compensated for in the process of distributing or mailing absentee ballots. If the staffing, because it has to be internal, if the staffing will be compensated for it, how would that not create a potential issue? I think the statute speaks something about compensated solely for the for mailing or distributing absentee ballots. One can say that this new function, because it will be a new function for in the town clerk's office, and the staffing that will need to be whether hired or reassigned for this particular assignment will be compensated for it. Wouldn't that create a potential conflict with the state statute? And that's just one question, and I don't know if perhaps corporate counsel can entertain that question. Let's just start with that, and then I'll probably speak about my other potential concerns. Corporate counsel, do you have any comments regarding that?
I do. Thank you, Chair. If I may, through you, I have given some thought to this. I don't believe that is what is intended by the statute. I read it to mean, third parties, not employees of the clerk's office. But like many things, I don't think there's ever been any litigation on that particular provision because, we've never had that sort of thing. That's just always been, I don't believe it speaks to the staff of the municipal clerk or secretary of the state. Again, there's no case law on that I could find. And I don't think you could say that staff of the clerk's office are solely employed for distributing absentee ballots. I would also say that, we now have staff of the clerk's office that distribute absentee ballots, and it's not problematic. So I don't read it as harshly as some do.
Thank you.
I mean, I do have lots of other thoughts, but I just wanted to answer your.
No, I mean, I like to hear your thoughts. I think this is a great conversation. So please continue.
Yeah, so if I may, my office was asked to sort of look into this and to provide some guidance. And I do apologize, we haven't had the opportunity to complete that guidance, but I think our position, or what we have seen, is that as to whether this would be prohibited by state statute, there is nothing that we have found that would indicate that this would be prohibited. I think as a practical matter, there are some other issues, and we didn't complete our review yet because at this point we're just reviewing whether there's litigation in other jurisdictions that might inform us of where litigation would come from should such an ordinance be passed. I think there are practical issues that do invite litigation, however. One of them being, which has been mentioned by a few people today, is that while we anticipate that no excuse absentee voting will become, we expect that to become the future in November. As of right now, we still have only absentee, or for cause, for lack of a better word, absentee voting. I recognize that the goal of this ordinance would be to increase voter turnout. However, if we were to see a significant increase in voter turnout, I do think it would invite litigation in any close election, because we don't have no excuse absentee voting. I think any candidate would challenge the votes of other individuals on the basis that their voters, people that voted for them by absentee ballot, were not sick, were not out of jurisdiction, or were not in the military at that time. And I think without no excuse absentee voting, I think pretty much any close election before passage of that constitutional amendment would be ripe for litigation, just as a practical matter.
Thank you, Corporate Counsel. Councilwoman Rosado.
Yeah, so I Giselle. So how many registered voters do we currently have in the city of Hartford?
Currently, right now, we are close to 64,000.
And out of the 64,000, how many individuals vote?
It depends on which election we're talking about.
Let's use the highest election that we've had.
If we go for, you want to go to the 2020, which was the presidential, we had about 20,000 people who came in person and 10,000 that came through ABs.
Okay, and in a majoral one?
And this last one we'll use is, the top was 4,000 ABs. I would have to look up that as in a report. Give me a few seconds, I can find it. But about 4,000 in ABs, I would have to look up the actual report for that one.
Okay, so while you do that, the reason I supported this resolution is I did to speak with the Secretary of the State, and it was stated that this was not illegal to do. We as a city, we need to try to start moving, the needle on a lot of things, especially when it comes to getting out the vote. We would probably be the first city that would do that, but why not, right? We're the city of Hartford. As to the town clerk, Mr. Clerk, let's say we went forward with this and we got an obscene amount of absentee ballots. How would your office handle that?
The same way we did it during COVID. Like I said, we processed approximately 13,000 votes there. We would not anticipate the same amount because those were extraordinary times. We do hire temporary workers for our elections. We would probably need to increase the temporary workers, not to the same level we had during COVID. and during COVID, we had a grant and the Secretary of State paid money also, but we would have to increase the staff and of approximately 3 more than we normally hire. We hire 3 during the normal election cycle. So we
Now,
would have temporary workers, 90-day workers.
okay,
They just get paid by the hour, no benefits.
okay, so let's talk about the prepping of this and getting that that information out, right? The actual absentee ballots out. Do you have any projected budget numbers of logistics on what it would take to get that out?
No, as I said earlier, we're in the process of developing all of that information. We have some vendors that we would talk to as far as the legality of what they would be able to do for us, what we can do in-house. So we're in the process of gathering all of that information to put together a financial package of what would be needed.
Okay. So, I don't know where my council colleagues are gonna stand on this. I am willing to support anything that, is to get, a voter turnout. And, we could always treat this as a pilot, right? What better times than for a presidential election that's coming out? And if it doesn't work, if it doesn't work, and, if it does, then, great for the city of Hartford. So those are my comments for now.
And through you, Chair, just to reply to your answer, Councilwoman Rosado, about 760 or 780 were the absentee ballots compared to the 4,000 that came out in person.
Yeah. So through you, Chair, I've had conversations with, individuals, especially the underpaid workers, right, who have part-time jobs, who work on the weekends, who have stated that if they got something in their mail, they would probably vote. But probably would not have the time, would be their last priority would be to come out and vote, especially when they have to run to a part-time job or attend, to their family members. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to one of your question, I believe the Secretary of State or not Secretary of State, the legislation does address the third party mailing of the application. So as far as distribution is concerned, hiring a mailing house to do our mailing for us, don't know legally, that would be an attorney response. But I do believe that is one of the concerns because, again, it's the city who's going to be doing the mailing, and the city should be the one who's stuffing the envelopes and keeping track of the numbers. In response to, the voter turnout, one of the things the Secretary of State and one of the things that has been proposed is that the 14 days early voting. So this is going to give, a lot more opportunities for people to come out and vote, during those 14 days as Councilwoman Rosado speak about, people are working part-time. Well, there's a Saturday, I don't think Sunday, that early vote is available. I'm not sure, but I don't remember if Sunday's available or not.
It is. We're here on
Sundays. Saturday and Sunday. So this is going to give people an opportunity to actually not just wait for election day only. One of the things I do ask is that we need to promote this. I know I've heard concerns regarding, where the location of, early voting is located. The state only gave, this is costing the city 40 to 50,000 to do early voting, and the registrar have to correct me if my numbers aren't correct. And, and if we do this throughout 2 parts of the state, that's 100,000. That, again, the cost, and people always tells me democracy isn't cheap, it's very expensive. And I do have to understand that, but we also have to be cognizant of how we are spending our money and the education of our community. And so I would have preferred to see we spend our time, and getting people to letting them know of the time for early voting. Because again, it's mornings, it's evenings, it's Saturday, it's Sunday. The flexibility of voting now really opens up, the door for anyone to go and vote at any time. So I will be down at the City Hall on the 26th. I hope to beat a friend of mine who said that they are going to be the first one to do early voting, but I will be there at 9:30 because I believe early voting starts at 10. So I want to be the first elected official, to come down at City Hall. So I'm challenging my other elected official to come down and meet me and see who's going to be the first one to do early voting in the city of Hartford on the 26th. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And having heard many different thoughts, let me give back a couple of comments. First, let's be very, very clear. The absentee ballot application states right on it the requirements for voting by absentee ballot. There's absolutely nothing about this process that changes that. And so I don't feel that there's any reason to assume because the city mails out an absentee ballot application to people that they're going to misuse that process. I would assume that the only people who are going to use it are the ones that read it, see that they have to indicate that they're disabled or not going to be in town that day. They're going to have to satisfy the legal requirements for absentee ballot voting. And I think we actually already have some historical data on this because we did it during COVID. And as the town clerk indicated, they did get back that year an awful lot of absentee ballot applications. But I don't think there's any reason to assume that there's going to be people are going to misuse this process. I think that's kind of an insult to Hartford voters. This is just letting them know what the law is. So I don't think we should be concerned that our election in the city is going to be tainted in any way. I also, as is very clear, we've never done this before. And so I understand people are, a little concerned. Oh my goodness, here's something new. We've never done it. Do we have to be worried? We are a city. We don't have to do the exact same things each and every year that we always have done. And one of the things that we always have done, or one of the things we have never done, is reach out directly to the voters. What we have done are a lot of voter education programs, a lot of PSAs, and I'm sure this year there's going to be some of those again. But come on, you heard it from our registrar of voters. Our turnout is abysmal. That mayoral election this year, I think it was like 12% turnout citywide. The Board of Education turnout was 4%. There's the expression out there that doing things the same way over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of mental illness. It's time to just try something different. It's very modest. So I would like to try to figure out a way to answer the concerns of other council people in moving this forward, because I just don't see that there's much of a downside, and it looks like there's a tremendous upside. So I'm having difficulty understanding the trepidation. If council president is concerned about the mailing aspect of an absentee ballot application, and by the way, I went back and read that email from Lou Button, and he certainly does not say that we cannot use a mailing house. He just suggests that it may be we want to do it in-house to keep better control of the process. But that's just a management issue. That's just controlling the process. But let me say this. Do you want to amend this resolution and remove the whole absentee ballot application mailing part of it and just send out information? I don't know that it would serve as good a purpose, but I think it would serve a great purpose if we didn't mail out an absentee ballot application, but we did mail out at least a one-page information sheet to every registered voter that says, here's what's going on in November. And oh, by the way, there's early voting, and let's tell them about early voting as well. I don't think early voting is going to produce any kind of dramatic increases here. You still are going to have to make your way down to City Hall. We have a hard enough time getting people to vote at their polling place, which might be a block from their house. So while I'm enthusiastic about early voting, I don't hold it out to be all and end all. I would also say to the registrar of voters, we added a provision in there offering to give your office the results of the mailing. If you don't want them, we'll take that provision out. That was solely intended, here we are, we're going to send a mailing out to 64,000 people. We may get back 10,000 envelopes undeliverable. The resolution says, let's send that information to the registrar of voters, so the registrar of voters has more information as to whether these people are really there or not. But if you don't want us to send that information to you, we can take it out. I just think the underlying concept here of communicating with our voters is something we've never done. Nobody does it, and we should take the leap and try it.
Can I respond to you, Chairman?
Yes, Giselle, please.
Okay. So just to piggyback on a couple of comments. First, sending out the applications is not an issue. Receiving the return mail is not an issue. ROV was open throughout the whole entire moment of COVID, and this staff worked very hard to make sure that when we received the 20 boxes or whatever from the town clerk's office, we reviewed each and every voter that was there and did what we needed to do as far as sending out a second half. Any correspondence that comes from the ROV or the town clerks that has to deal with the actual registered voter must be responded by this office. That's an absolute everyday task that we take on. So that part is not here. In regards to the absentee applications, if it was not such a big concern, right now at the state level, they're reviewing, and all day yesterday was going through Bill 5498, which was in regards to absentee ballot and the process that is now taking place due to the fact of Bridgeport's incidents. Along with that, they are also building another bill, 390, with election penalties due to the absentee harvesting, as they named it. With that, they also are planning to do an oversight committee. Now, whether or not all these three bills pass, you will consider that due to the fact of everybody's worries. And listen, it's the decision of the council to do this. I will support. I am here as a registrar. My sole duties are to make sure polling locations are open, now to make sure early voting is effective, all right, and to inform and make sure that any registered voter that has a question with their registration is answered. With that being said, it is up to you, the council body, to make that decision. I am not here to object. What I am here to say is that you have to look at the finer pieces to this with the legislation. It's just not section 9-140. It's an entire chapter to it that talks about how is the town clerk going to keep the upkeep of all the logs? How are we going to make sure that our SAB work voters don't get duplicate ballots? How are we going to make sure that our other sites of people that are coming in to get the ABs? I'm not stopping the AB process. I'm not stopping you sending out the application, but there is particular things here that we have to be careful that Hartford is not considered a harvesting city with the absentee ballot process. That's all.
I think it's ludicrous that anybody would consider the capital city of the state to be harvesting ballots. No offense, registrar, but I just
and listen, I'm not here to insult any registered voter here, anybody can fill out an application or get the assistance to fill out the application, because that portion is there on the AB application for the assistance part. My whole thing is, because of the incident that occurred in Bridgeport, we have to tread lightly with moving forward with doing this.
We're solving Bridgeport's problem is what we're doing. We're solving the state's problem, and we're being leaders in demonstrating how you solve the problem. Let's put our heads together and let's solve it.
Thank you. Councilman, Assistant Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I know that there's been a lot of discussion back and forth, pros and cons. I think that this is something that may not be solved with this particular resolution. I'm for waiting for the no excuse provision to be passed, and let's see when that, if and when that gets passed first before we proceed. And if we're talking about some type of a marketing campaign, let's have some additional conversations as to what that looks like, whether it's such as what HR has done to hire Lumi or whatever that that the consulting firm is working with the ROV's office to get some information out to our residents by way of TV, radio, that type of thing. So I would make a motion right now to postpone this resolution.
Motion has been made. I also believe that Town Clerk McGregor had some comments. Can I get some guidance here? Do we have to entertain the motion at this point, or can we allow?
It's up to you if you want to continue to have some discussion. So if you're not ready, I will withdraw the motion until you call for it.
Yeah, let me allow Town Clerk McGregor to speak. He has his hand raised, and then we can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I wanted to ask, because I heard some things that seem like there's a potential for fraud or misuse of the system. And I wanted Eric to explain the checks and balances of our system that we have and how it's done, so that no one would believe that it would be ripe for rampant fraud.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'm not sure how good my mic is, but that being said, to keep it short, there's built-in safeguards across the board at every level, for every contingency as far as duplicate ballots goes, double votes, under 2 town clerks. I've ran probably 30 elections. We've done a good job at that. And I don't think at this point, this resolution, would compromise the integrity of the voters. But like I said, that's a decision the council body will have to make. I think any information or any input to help the voters and to help the city, I think that's a welcome change.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments before we entertain a potential motion? Okay, see no comments. The chair will entertain any motion at this point.
I'll move to send it back to council with a favorable recommendation at this time.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made, properly second. Any comments? Hearing none. Those in favor, show by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Nay.
All right, at this point, we seem to have a 2 in favor, 2 against it. I believe that at this point, this resolution will then stay in committee. It does not have the votes to be sent or failed. Is that correct, Corporate Counsel?
Yes, the charter rules require a majority of affirmative votes for an action to pass.
In that case, I'll make a motion to send it back to council with no recommendation.
The motion has been made. has been second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those against it?
Nay.
Okay. Same result.
Mr. Charm,
Oh,
I'll move to postpone it in this committee.
Second.
a motion has been made and properly second. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. The motion has been postponed. And now we could move on to our next agenda item, which I lost because I opened too many windows. Allow me a second here, okay? The next agenda item 2.6, Mayor Alulampalan with accompanying ordinance establishing the procedure necessary for flag raisings at City Hall. I don't know that we have anybody speaking on this. We spoke about this during our last committee meeting. But in speaking with corporate counsel and some of the my council colleagues, we have to some extent agreed to leave the ordinance the way that it's written right now with the language. We spoke about we agree that the flagpole is not a pole for free expression of the community. Therefore, we also believe that that we will take a close approach on how to use the flagpole, meaning that only through a council resolution we would then be able to determine what flags could be raised, whether it's because it's a nation with diplomatic relationships, a sports team, or any other flag in conjunction with a city event or a ceremony. That's the language that the ordinance has right now, and I am one that's in favor of maintaining this language and sending this back to council. But I'll open the floor for any other of my council colleagues to make a statement or ask any questions on this. Does anyone have any statement, any questions regarding this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we've had extensive conversation on this. This is an ordinance like any other ordinance that can be brought back to the table, changed, and put through a public hearing again. So I've always said that a ordinance is a live document, open to change. So I'd like to make a motion to move this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Motion has been made. Any second?
Second.
A motion has been made and properly second. Those in favor show by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The ayes will have it, and let the record show that item 2.6 will be sent back to council with a favorable recommendation. Seeing that this is the last item on the agenda, I will call for this meeting to be adjourned.
So moved.
All right. Thank
Good
you, guys.
night.
All right. Good night.